Hi, everybody. Welcome to Grace with Paul Gray. How would you feel if I told you today you look awful? Just awful. How would you feel? Do you know the original meaning of the word awful? It originally meant full of awe, A-W-E. Here's another word. How about if your son came home and said, "Oh man, today at school there was a bully"? The word bully originally meant a good fellow or a darling. How about artificial? Today we think it means fake. Artificial originally meant artistically constructed. Or how about this word, symposium? Ever been to a symposium or planning on going to a symposium? The original meaning of the word was a drinking party. We all know words that have become slang for the opposite of their meaning. Like in sports today, he's really bad. He's a bad dude. That means he's a really good athlete. What do you think of when you hear the word repent? When I hear that word, up until a few years ago when I heard that word, it brought back memories of the 1950s, of small churches, church camps, where there would be a red-faced preacher yelling at us that if we don't repent, we're going to go to hell and we'll suffer eternal conscious torment. Now, not all my church camps and church service experiences were like that. I had some very positive experiences in church camps and church. But I also had some of what I just told you about. The admonishment to repent in those kind of settings left a scary, fearful, bad taste in my mouth, because that's what the well-meaning, but I believe misguided preachers wanted us to experience, fear. The concept of repenting included feeling really bad because you were really bad. Not just that you had done bad things, but that you were bad to the core. It included the message that you were so bad that God, who was perfect, couldn't even stand to be around you. He was repulsed by you. Even the few good things that you might have ever done were like filthy rags to him. Repenting included being so remorseful that you would grovel in shame and attempt to confess any and every bad thing you'd ever done in hopes that you'd remember enough things and be remorseful enough that you'd somehow get God to forgive you. But you were never really sure. Repenting included promising God that you wouldn't do those bad things ever again, which of course is impossible, and which led then to the need for more condemnation, guilt, remorse, and repenting. That was how they got you to come back every week. There was just one major problem with that whole concept. It wasn't what the word originally meant. It was actually just the opposite. Now, is it a bad thing that the word awful has come to mean something just the opposite of what it used to mean? No, because we know what it means and how to use it. But when we take a word and use it exactly the opposite of what Jesus did and her followers and the writers of the New Testament, that's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. The word that is incorrectly translated these days as repent into English comes from the Greek word metanoia, which simply meant to change your mind 180 degrees and believe just the opposite of what you previously believed. And in context of how Jesus and the New Testament writers use it, it meant stop believing that God is punitive, list-keeping, sacrifice-desiring, angry, impossible to please, demanding, excluding, and takes delight in punishing his enemies. Stop believing that the only way you can please and appease such a deity is to keep all the rules perfectly, even though the rules don't make sense sometimes. When Jesus said metanoia, and when the other biblical writers in the New Testament used that word, he meant stop believing that God is like that, and start believing instead that God is totally good, that God totally loves everyone unconditionally, that God accepts everyone, that God does good to those who incorrectly think that they are his enemies, Start believing that God has forgiven everyone in advance and even likes everyone, even those who sometimes do bad things. Stop believing those false ideas about God and start believing the truths about the only true God. Start believing in grace. Do a 180. Start believing grace and quit believing in a false concept of a bad God. The first church got that. That's what the church was, why it was so amazing. They knew that Jesus was like that, and they knew that he taught them that the Father was like that. But it was super hard for religious people to get it. They kept wanting to add rules and revert back to what they thought before. And for the last 2,000 years, religion has continued to add more and more and more rules and to make God out to be actually worse and worse and worse. Well, we're going to take a look at some of those things in the days to come. Hope you'll join me. Thanks, everybody.